My name is John Head. I have the distinct privilege of moderating this session with you today. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, if you're joining us from across the pond. I'm an alumnus from the Hankamer School of Business from '93. So very excited to be joining this session today and kind of taking you through it. Let me introduce the Wakefields. Kirk and Lane Wakefield have part of the Center for Sports Strategy and Sales. I'm super excited to have them on today. Dr. Kirk is the Edwin Streetman Professor of Retail Marketing at Baylor, where he's the Executive Director of the Sports Strategy and Sales Program. He's also the founder of Wakefield Research Partners, which is a research consultancy. His work can be found in journals including the Journal of Marketing, Journal of Consumer Research, Journal of Academy of Marketing Science, Journal of Service Research, and Journal of Retailing. As well as has his own book in team sports marketing. His son, Lane Wakefield, is also a graduate from Baylor. Both got their MDs from Baylor. Lane is actually a clinical assistant professor of marketing and the director of the Center of Sports Strategy and Sales at Baylor. His research can also be found in journals, including the Journal of Advertising, Journal of Service Research, Interactive Marketing, Sports Management Review, and the Marketing Intelligence and Planning. Thanks for joining us, and really excited to capitalize on this topic. I was actually at the game for the men's championship. I made special arrangements to get there just for that event. I actually have the game recorded still, and still watch it probably every few weeks or so. So I'm a big nut when it comes to Baylor basketball. So couldn't be more excited to join this with you guys. So Kirk and Lane, let me kind of hand it over to you. And I think Kirk, you've got a couple of opening comments.
Sure. Yeah, Lane and I were also there along with some of the rest of our family for the Final Four. We managed to sit in the middle of the Gonzaga fans on the semifinals and just make fun of them basically. And then we're there to celebrate along with everybody else at the game. So yeah, quite an occasion. I'm sure some of our visitors today were there as well. So yeah, just a little bit of intro. We started the Sports Strategy and Sales program at Baylor about 17 years ago. And probably some of our listeners are part of those graduates, where we placed about now 350 graduates, about 20 a year into professional sports, collegiate sports, and their various levels of expertise, which Lane will share with you. So if you have any children getting ready to go to school or other friends, recommend them come to the Hankamer Business School and major in marketing and S3.
Just so you know about who we are and what we do before we kind of get into the championship data, in case you have some interest for a kid or a nephew or niece or somebody like that. The goal for our program is to help students find a fulfilling career in sports and entertainment. So some of them have questions like, what should I use my electives on? Are there really any jobs in sports? Can I make a career and a future out of that? Or put those dreams on hold? Kids like me grow up thinking I want to play professional basketball or be in the Baylor basketball or football team, and then you realize you're 5'10" and you're 40 times about 5'10" too. So you figure out that's not going to work out. But hey, maybe I can be on the business side. And then so some students come in and think that's what they want to do. And then some might doubt themselves. So there's some problems that come with that. We help guide students that have any of those questions and thoughts, that have some passion for sports and our business students. We guide them towards those careers. As Kirk mentioned, lots of alumni out there. We do that through internship placement and job placement. So any students that are here, they can drop into our club. Any of you that might be in the sports industry that are Baylor alum that might want to be involved with us in some form or fashion, maybe we can find a spot for you there as well. And then if they choose to do it, then they might find themselves in Las Vegas, like Todd Pollock, nice one of our best alum over the years, who pretty much started the Las Vegas Golden Knights from scratch. A pretty wild story that was in a Baylor magazine not too long ago. We help students that have a dream of being in sports but don't know how to get there. We guide them towards success in that field.
Well, I've got a question for you, Lane, or Kirk, either one of you guys. So I had a double major in accounting and information technology come out of Baylor, so I was a real geek. But I finally figured out later in life, my real passion is selling and revenue generation, go to market. And so obviously your program, and being a big sports nut as well, would have been a perfect fit for me. You're just a little too late in introducing it. You wasn't there in 1993, unfortunately. I'd be kind of curious, in terms of starting the program and bringing kids through, any perspective that you might be able to share with parents that may be on the line right now in terms of, hey, my kid actually probably has the right DNA for this type of program and this type of career trajectory in their life. What should they look for? What are you seeing in terms of the types of kids that come through this and really excel at this type of program?
So I'll give the first answer and Lane might add to it. But first of all, it shouldn't really be any mystery whenever we have parents in and we talk to them. Their concern is, will my child someday get out of the house and be gainfully employed? All right, so that I get a raise. So that's what most parents are concerned about, among other things. And the answer is, guess what every other organization in the country is looking for? Somebody working sales or basically analytics. So we designed the program to place them where they're going to get hired, most likely, sales and business analytics. And if they, for some reason or other, change their minds, 4 years later, like happens sometimes from 18 to 22 and 25 and 20, whatever, then fine, you have a marketing major and you're prepared to sell, or you're prepared to do analytics, or both. So that's my 2 cents.
That's a great perspective, because you can, either one of those foundations gives you a trajectory of where you can actually go in other industries or other kind of capabilities from that standpoint.
Yep, pretty much nailed it. Only thing I'll add is our program through Kirk and Dr. Daryl Lanus, who's been here the last 15, 20 years on the academic side and longer than that over in athletics. Their connections over that time period pretty much means we know somebody at every team in the country and some across the pond too. So the connections help a lot when you're targeting a kind of narrow.
Yeah, it is who you know for a fact. Okay.
Without question. Without question.
Yeah, I would say you can't go anywhere now to any professional team in the United States. If you go to any professional team in the United States, particularly on the ticket sales and revenue generation side, and say, have you heard of Baylor S3? They'll all say yes. So I'm going to share with you. And by the way, that's just because the Lord has blessed us. Daryl and I often said, it's not because we're geniuses, just kind of like with Joseph, God was with him and God's been with us. And thankfully we paid attention. So we would like to have shown you this video just to get us all hyped up again. I'm sure a lot of people in the audience remember much of this. Kind of gives you a warm feeling right down here, doesn't it? I mean, it does for me. I almost start tearing up, just seeing the picture. So we'd recommend you go watch it again and again. And John, gosh, Lane and I both said this on the way back. Why didn't we record the game?
Yes.
It's on YouTube.
You didn't know. I make sure I recorded the pre-events, the post. I mean, I have like 12 hours of recorded content.
Yeah.
No.
They finally put it up on YouTube for anybody wondering.
Oh, did they? Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
So a little bit of research. We also worked with our admissions and enrollment department at Baylor, getting some data. So this is based on some of their research as well as ours. But research shows historically that a championship lasts for about 3 years with respect to the downstream effects. There's a lag effect. So because of when admissions and everything else is, we won't see an effect this year. It's already too late, if you will. But we'll see it the next 3 years. Same for Bama. I actually saw a chart for Bama because they've had this habit of winning. And so their chart for applications and acceptances and so on is just like pretty much straight line up from when they started winning, when Saban came in. It's pretty interesting. But it's true for others that win one championship or two, it lasts for 2-3 years. The next little picture you see over on the right is the merit students, the high merit students that Baylor and every other major university would like to attract more of. It's interesting. They are very price elastic. So price matters, what your scholarship you're giving them. Whereas Baylor, so get this, I just found this amazing learning this. Those who are not in the high merit group, call them as you will, we're pretty much price inelastic. So price doesn't matter too much if you're not in the high merit group. But the ones that are in the high merit group, price and other things like national championships and other factors determine their choice. And it's because they have many choices, right?
Yeah.
So kind of interesting. So that's an impact factor. Over on the left, So this works both ways. You have good effects from good press and bad effects same way. So you might have known in the past we've had some bad press for a few things. Guess what? It doesn't help for applications and acceptances or enrollment rather. But when we do, and if we get a New York Times like the one I have on the left, that's worth 5 times as much of a lift on applications as any other type of press clipping, if you will. So good news for us. Then lastly, and I'm sure Lane might have some comments on maybe all of these, particularly the next one. As we know, what is it? What's Hancock's first name? John, is it? I messed up the other.
Yep, John Hancock.
Yeah, John Hancock. He'd said that if Scott Drew, they win the national championship, he'd make the movie. So I found this clip. Who do we cast? So this one that was the most popular one apparently was Tom Hanks as Scott Drew, which seems funny. But the point is, if it has a good storyline, like a good script, if your championship, they have research that shows this, if some championships are better than others. So a good story line behind it, it has a stronger impact on applications.
Yeah, there was one question, and actually I recognize the guy's name actually. In terms of if you're in a certain type of, and you may get into this, Kirk and Lane, if you're in a certain type of sales program, sales profession, but you actually want to pivot and get into the professional sports arena, and they're already out of school, just any perspective or feedback on that front. So you may get into that here a little bit later on.
Yeah, probably won't as much, but I asked Christian to email me. There's a path for sure. If you got sales experience, you can apply for those sales gigs. But yeah, we can get to know each other, and maybe there's a way we can recommend you to a certain place you want to go.
Yeah, I see my buddy Mark asking a question about any measurement on impact on donations going forward. I didn't find much research on it, but I think it goes like this, Mark. I was thinking about that question obviously beforehand, which is, so what I think happens is, so imagine for our new arena, which we think is going to be where? When we get our new arena, either next to the Farrell Center on the river or down the street just a little bit, when we do, I think going to donors specifically, this is definitely going to help, right?
So I pulled research from 14 years worth of football champions, and they vast majority got more cash after a football championship. I haven't seen data on basketball. I would assume it's similar. Not a bad segue into I think the next slide you had on the docket, which was mine.
Yeah. And while we're on that one real quickly, Lane, the other research showed that the only thing that has an impact on kind of downstream is football and men's basketball championships. Now, maybe there's some other research that hasn't been done yet, but you can think about it in terms of how many people are actually following the sport. And so football and men's basketball makes sense.
I will say, I'm a big tennis fan. And for those who are paying attention, Baylor almost won.
Yeah, we're really good.
National champion. We're really good, and especially the new coach. He's doing an amazing job. And if you don't watch tennis, if you're not really necessarily a big tennis fan, go watch college tennis. College tennis, and actually, if you get a chance, go to a college tennis match, and you'll become hooked on tennis.
We have one of the best facilities, one of the best teams in the country.
Absolutely.
But it's not a huge impact on these other things.
Yeah.
Sure.
All right, Lane.
So same with donations, but also with academic quality. Winning the championship isn't going to be the direct effect. Like we win championships, and all of a sudden someone comes out of the woodworks with lots of money or big impactful decision making. It probably helps them along the process that they were already going on. So maybe faster, maybe in larger amounts, but changes the way people think about whatever it is that they're into, right? So in this case, this example is from research, looked at championships and how it affects people's perceptions of academic quality. This study was done at LSU after they won a championship, I believe in football, and they surveyed folks from in and around LSU and some outside of that area. And people thought about the academic quality of the school significantly more if they were paying attention and realized that they'd won a championship. So kind of that halo effect of if you know something good about somebody, then you assume the rest is good too. Same idea here. So winning the championship helps people see Baylor as higher in academics, even though winning basketball doesn't have anything to do with academics.
Yeah, I think I'd tag on to that, Lane, with David's first question about, he has a question over here, what effect does a women's basketball championship garner? The research that I saw, that's what I was saying, is specifically in terms of the impact on apps, it's just the championships only matter for football and men's basketball. Now, that said, I think the fact that we've won it multiple times, it kind of factors into what Lane's saying here, that for the segment that follows women's basketball, for that matter, tennis, men and or women's really, but men in particular, that segment it affects, right? But that's such a small number, relatively speaking, out of the, we'll see later just how our student body is made up. And so it's not as big an impact as it would be for those where many people follow. I mean, think TV ratings.
Yep.
So football, then men's basketball, then probably women's basketball, maybe baseball, and so on, going down the line. Yeah. The other question David has is, what's the effect locally versus, say, nationally? I think all the media impact is certainly a national scale. I think in Texas, and I was talking with the academic enrollment VP, and we're saying that among those who already know us pretty well, Texas, et cetera, probably doesn't have a huge impact. But those who previously were not considering Baylor, maybe hadn't heard of us or whatever, and they're Googling, and they're putting in university, Christian school, business major, let's say. And then they find out about Baylor and they find out about the championship, then it puts them in the consideration set. So basically move people who weren't thinking about us into the, if you will, the sales funnel or the consideration set, and that's the impact. And it tends to be more national then versus necessarily locally, because everybody around here has heard of us.
We do have some overall data, which I think is coming up next, right?
Yep. I will say that Baylor's strategic goal is to obviously increase. They're trying to get over half of Baylor's student body to be outside of Texas. So yeah, here's what some of our numbers look like that you may be familiar with or not, but kind of interesting to look at overall positive enrollment trends. There was a little bit of a downturn after, we'll just call them the troubles. To this 20, so some of y'all may not know that in Ireland, they refer to their problems over the years, the troubles. All right, so anyway, a little bit of downturn there, but basically it's been upswing the last couple of years there, essentially since Linda has gotten here. And then you can see the undergraduate enrollment. I did talk with enrollment, and basically our target is about what you see here, which is around 3,500 undergrads with about 14,000 total in the undergraduate population. And then just keep increasing, hopefully, the quality of the students that we get in that, in each successive class, which we've generally been able to do. So there's the overall trends. Then we get into specifics. So this one's super interesting. So the green is the completed application. So the number of apps we received, basically with a little bit of a lagged effect of what happens when we won the Big 12 championships in football. So you see that going up 2015, 16, 17. What year was RG3 Heisman?
10, 11.
Is that right?
11, was it that long ago? Was
Seems
it?
like forever. So I don't have the pre-14, but our football championships are right in there. So you can see that lagged effect there. Then you can see what's important to notice is that percentage of accepted who enrolled, that's that black line. So our apps were essentially going up, stayed pretty high through the last 3 or 4 years. But the issue was the percentage of those who accepted, who we accepted, that also enrolled. And that number dropped off 2017, 18, 19, which if you're a sports fan, you're saying,
Correlation.
sorry?
I said there's a correlation.
Yes, exactly. Either A, we were bad at football except for 1 year in there. We had some other issues that were the bad public press didn't help us for sure, right? And so here we are now. So what we're setting the stage for, right? That if we do this again in a couple, 3 years, we hope that we'd see that 16.2 jump back up to those 24, 25s. So that's interesting. Yeah, and thanks, Jake, for reminding us of why the statue's out there in front of the stadium. 2010 and 2011 was RG3. And then also kind of follows suit with our transfers and acceptances and enrollments. So kind of the same peak years. Again, there's a lot of other factors, but given that everything was going along positively for football and everything else up through those years and then not. And then this is super interesting. Always why it's good to have comparison data, or know what the whole situation is. So we've had difficulty getting more males to enroll at Baylor. What our audience may not know is that's the problem everywhere. Every university, this is chief of their enrollment strategy is how do we get more men to enroll and so on. So by the way, good ratio for those of us who went to Baylor and were guys, but not so good if you're trying to, strengthen your enrollment and balance it out. So you can see that decline. So what the championship affords us is, right, the opportunity to capitalize on the championships and to have a targeted campaign towards males, which is even more important because as I learned this week, during the pandemic, more males went straight to the workforce than to go to school. So this problem has only gotten worse in the last 2 years. So good opportunity. How or what we should do? It's a good question.
That is interesting. Why is this a situation across the board with higher education institutions?
Yeah, I actually did some research on it a couple of years ago and I've forgotten the main reasons. Maybe some can speculate. I think I would generally say, who knows better what to do with their lives at that stage? Females.
Good point.
I mean, just generally speaking, I do know this research, interesting fact, often mentioned in class, emotional IQ, women are 11 years ahead of men.
At that point in life, 11 years.
11 years. So also explains partly why we've had, and it's been widening somewhat. It's also why it explains somewhat why fewer are marrying, at what were, younger, early 20s. They're waiting longer. There's a bunch of research on that. So anyway, I would say that it is some of that. And then a big question I think is, and Lane, I don't know if you have any other research on this, but a big question for anybody is, do I fit at that institution? So if you're trying to increase diversity or something else, in this case, it's not like you think, it's more males, but anyway, any kind of diversity goals. The issue is somebody saying, oh yeah, I can see myself there. And that's part of what we do in S3 is, can you see yourself being in professional sports and working in a fulfilling career? Well, we've got plenty of people that we can show you from all walks of life, if you will, who have done it coming through Baylor. And so when they see that, they can believe it, then they enroll. There's a lot of research on gender effects also in choice of major and also leaving. I'm starting to come back to me. The females sometimes react differently to the opportunities in going to school than do males in general, but I can't remember enough of the specifics. Lane, do you have some stuff to add maybe?
I'm just throwing out there that males are more inclined to be interested in manual labor type positions that are available without college degrees. So more of them have an opportunity that's different or interest that's different.
Very interesting.
So in general, we have that opportunity to increase that male enrollment. And then here's, kind of again, some more of the data.
So, oh, there you go. Okay. All right. Yeah, you're going to get there.
Yeah, so that's the question. I'm hoping some of our audience has some ideas here. But what should Baylor do now? So we got the field house that we don't know for sure where it is. I'm personally rooting for on campus, but I can see lots of good reasons to put it down the road. Then how does the championship help one maybe or the other, or what should we do? And are there other ways that we can develop campaigns that capitalize on this? So I'm kind of asking the audience here if anybody is with us.
Yeah, remind you, if you have a question, put it into the Q&A. I am curious, maybe while we wait for some folks to post some questions, with it being middle of June, and obviously classes getting started up late August or early September, what are we beginning to see in terms of the numbers for 2021, 2022? Have you had a chance to see those numbers and just have an initial reaction to what the championship may have done on that front?
Yeah, that's why I reached out to our admissions and enrollment, and they said we won't see that really till, because of the deadlines, they were basically done by roughly the championship time period. So we won't really see that effect until fall-ish, if you will.
We won't know that till fall, but I talked to somebody over there who told me there are more who say they're coming. So there's the amount of people that got accepted, and then the deposits, whatever that process is, right? But there are more that say they're coming than there have been the last at least 4 or 5 years. Very large number have said they're actually going to come. I don't know that deposit date and those different things. So yeah, we'll find out in the fall. But at least where we were in the process as of a couple of weeks ago when I was talking to them about it, there are far more. So maybe that's partially due to that.
And I think we'll see what we saw during those 2014 to 16 era, where more people will actually enroll who get accepted. I think Sarah's question, if I gather, Sarah, you're probably referencing maybe the field house. I'm going to take it as that, which is what would the students want? It's an interesting question because, we've had some problems with student attendance at basketball. We work directly with athletics, also another pitch for our program, but we have an internship program where our students work in athletics, selling and doing business analytics, web analytics, and so on with athletics. And we work on committees there. And a question has often come up is, why aren't there more students here? So it seems like it would be important to find out what the students would want, assuming they know. But the other thing I think is, we've discussed, is how do you make basketball, men or women's for that matter, but men's in this case, how do you make it more of a social occasion like football? Mm-hmm. So we've done research of working with athletics of all the ticket buyers of Baylor athletics. And we find that it doesn't really matter how passionate you are about football. I mean, mostly people are very passionate about it, but almost everybody attends football. The variation comes in the other sports and depending on how passionate they are. And the reason everybody goes football is because you don't have to love football to love going to the game, like Lane's picture behind him, right? It's the experience. So how can you change the experience at the field house? To me, that's what we need to find out.
Yeah, right on. And I had freshmen, including our babysitter, who's not crazy on football, not crazy on sports really in general. But yeah, the Baylor line and that process being involved for her, it's like, of course I'm going to do that. So there needs to be some part of basketball where it's what everybody does, and it's something that they can be a part of.
Yeah, I like Chase Canaley, one of our S3 graduates, and also his family has a scholarship for S3 students. So again, thanks Chase and family. But Chase asked, what are some of the NCAA limitations we should be aware of? And for instance, can you do targeted ads on Insta, social media using highlights? I don't know if I know of any limitations. Maybe somebody else does. But now that you say that or ask that, Chase, I can't think of all the ads I get served on Insta who seem to be listening to our conversations that we have in the household, and then I see it pop up on Insta because they're listening. I've not seen anything pop up for university programs, for instance, much. I mean, I see the Baylor feeds that I follow, but I can't think of much advertising, so I don't really know the answer to that.
Well, it's interesting you say that, just because you look at even in the professional arena, when they build new stadiums, they create more of an environment around the stadiums. Like here in Atlanta, they built a new Truist Stadium, a few years ago, but there's an entire work, live, play environment around the stadium. And so you go there to have an experience. You go to have an experience, not just to go to a game. So that would definitely help quite a bit.
Yeah. So, by the way, thanks, David. David notes that his son is coming here after looking at 20 other programs, and Owen is coming here over other sorry schools like TCU because of S3. So, thanks, David. He didn't say the sorry part. That's my editorial. And then Bill asked a great question, I think. How do we better publicize the program by highlighting our graduates like Todd at the Golden Knights? And, we've got graduates, and they do write articles. So there is an article out there in our news about Todd and Lindsey Beal, who's at the Spurs in a senior position, and various others. We have somebody who's Drew Mitchell is the Associate Commissioner of Conference USA, for instance, in charge of all their revenue generation. So we do, but how do you get it out to the different segments who would care? I think, frankly, our program could do a better job with our social media, which we're doing. In fact, only since Lane's gotten here in the last year, he just started last year, but our LinkedIn following has grown from, I don't know, a few hundred to over about 1,100 now. Insta still needs some help. So we can do better. Baylor PR, probably, given this, it really is a great point, which is what do people read about in social? I mean, what audience did you think about it? What do you follow? What's on your the Bleacher Report, or what's on your Insta? If you're following anything besides just your friends, it's probably whatever you're passionate about, right? So sports, maybe food, whatever else. So you're going to pick up on when Baylor talks about sports, you're probably going to see that. So it might make more sense for Baylor marketing. Maybe Jason Cook, I'll mention this to him, our VP of marketing, which is maybe you ought to do more focused pieces on social aimed at business, the intersection of business and sports, self-serving, of course. Any other thoughts?
Nope. Hard question to answer because everybody's got the same problem, getting people's attention, and stuff. In our on-campus space, we're looking at ways to highlight folks like Todd through different wall displays, and maybe even having a mini statue of Todd like RG3 just in the business side. So we'll see. Yeah,
we do have, by the way, we do have our own S3 classroom. It's fairly prominent on the first floor of the business school. If any of our listeners here want to help us in our, I guess I'll call it a remodel. It's not quite a remodel, but
decor. Yeah, we have a company that redoes. They help pro teams with their locker room spaces and fan spaces, and just try and bring it to top notch, I guess, visuals. It's not necessarily changing walls as much as it is decorating in a high class way.
Yeah, it's like what I imagine many of our listeners have been to the football, taking a tour of the stadium, and then gone through our locker rooms and area, and that old space coming in. That's done by a company like what we're trying to work with to make our space look that pretty. So also open to donations, just going to say.
They actually, same company did everything you saw at the NFL draft was them. They do a lot of big projects, so we're happy to learn from them.
Yeah, that next question so by the way, David, thanks. David says Jim Caviezel for Scott Drew. I like that one too. Yeah, Paul says, what does the championship bring to the university in terms of merch sales? And what about RG3, for instance, and the same thing? One of our big problems with merchandise sales is our distribution is lousy. i.e. if you go to Dallas, Fort Worth area, you'll see UT stuff, TCU stuff, A&M stuff, and then maybe you'll find some Baylor stuff. Now, partly that's because our, number of our alumni, frankly, isn't a big enough market for them to care about. So just compare, Texas A&M with, 50,000 students, whatever it is, and however many graduates in ours. Part of it's that. The other part is we've not done as an effective job, I think. And then part of that's also licensing. I think we've been a little tighter in the past about our licensing agreements, but again, part of it's demand. Who wants to license Baylor gear to be sold to whom? And can you sell it on a national level like Michigan or Duke or whatever? Now, one idea though that came out of our discussion with enrollment management is, in terms of marketing strategy, is if we try to position ourselves as a basketball school, which is what we say after 1-11 seasons, but anyway, or even 2-5, 7, whatever we were. But they were saying, seriously, if we marketed ourselves more like Duke does or some of the others, then you could have that persona, and then that might give rise to more merch sales, would be my guess. And the demand would pull it through as opposed to our trying to push it out there.
I'm sure there was a big bump in merch sales in town. We don't know that number.
Yeah, right. The other thing is just on a national level or NFL, whatever professional level, merch sales typically only make up 5 to 10% of their total revenue generation, through licensing and merch sales. The biggest revenues come from tickets and sponsorships and media. So those are the three main sources that make up 90% of all revenue. So the bigger question is, and the obvious answer is, will we get more primetime TV? Certainly. On basketball, we got quite a bit. Will we be on there more next year? I got to believe, right? That means our media revenue goes up.
Yeah.
So that one I hadn't thought of till now.
Yeah, in terms of actually being on ESPN and CBS for most of the games versus Fox Sports West or Bally Sports or whatever it is now, just have a broader national reach.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we get paid more for being on those prime times.
Yep.
Yep. And there's good research showing that our sponsorship should follow and ticket sales should follow that. So it kind of snowballs once you get more attention.
Yeah. Couple of questions. I'm going to jump to one and maybe go back to the other. But Jim Alexander points out, and I'll encourage you to the best of my knowledge, last meeting I was in, he asked about the experience at Baylor basketball games. We should consider putting the students on the center court as Duke does. And that is under consideration, if not the plan. The previous meetings I've been in, that yes, to reorient it so we have the Duke advantage, kind of like the picture I have on the screen. I guess that looks like that's the student section on the right? Or is it the center? I don't know. But I think that's the plan, to not only put old people like me on the court side. As long as they put me there, I'm fine.
I mean, Chip and Joanna and 5,000 students.
Yeah. Yeah. So by the way, and Kyle asked, can the Waco Chamber of Commerce leverage the Natty to drive more visitors to Waco? Now that's a good question. You'd think, and by the way, one of our graduates just became the new head of the Waco Sports Commission, Mike Vogler, who's all about sponsorship sales and driving revenue. He's just starting this month. So I would think he would take advantage of that, because his whole responsibility is to drive tourism using sports. How, I'm not real sure, but you'd think they could. Yeah, so Jake asked, this sounds right. The new pavilion will have almost 3 times more court sides. You can see how it's configured. Kind of like, makes me think of Butler or some of the other field houses. So it is a field house, basically, not a Coliseum, if you will. So he's saying that there will be at least 3 times as many courtside seating for the students and for men's game, and other seating options closer to the court. So that should suggest, because right now the way our Coliseum is, it's just not good for creating a great basketball environment. So I think that's going to be to our advantage. And so, by the way, whenever Baylor continues to raise money for this, if we have any other donors out there in the listening audience, please start helping. Increase your Bear Foundation. I'm sure they'll be asking me as well. And maybe who knows, maybe I'll throw in a few more bucks for it. By the way, I will tell you, I was on a committee that shut down during COVID because it got put on hold, but I'm assuming we'll be resuming. We spent a fair amount of time talking about what else would make this facility a real place for social experiences. So we'll be on the river. The plan has, some of y'all may have already seen it, but the original plan has basically a deck that goes up to the river. So you could be out waiting before the game on a nice deck, overlooking the river on that side. Then we discussed, and I don't know if this was going to happen, but I love the idea, making one end of it on the exterior, have restaurants on one end. And that's why I think maybe we're considering the downtown and make it more mixed use so that people are used to coming there for, Starbucks and make a chicken and waffles or whatever you want, on one end, or my vote was Papados. But anyway, and a few others, you put that on one end, and then conceivably, I've seen this in some places, Lane, I think you had it even at Mercer, where there's some places where you can see through, down onto the court from an external retail space. So that might be an interesting idea if you could pull off both. So that the key thing is getting people in the habit of going to the game. And the problem with our current facility is the only reason you'd ever go there is to go to a basketball game, and its location is such that no one otherwise goes there, right? Whereas frankly, if it was downtown, the rest of the community would be used to going. We also done research to know that the main determinants of attending men's and women's basketball are two things. One is passion for that particular sport and proximity. There's no way, and all of us know this, right? Tuesday or Wednesday night game at 8 p.m. and you live more than 35 miles away, unless you're the most passionate fan, like I would be, of course, but you're probably not making that game. So you've got to pull that community in to increase our capacity or ability to fill that house every night.
So seeing it every day in your commute on 35 would help. Easy on and off would help. So a couple more questions came in if we want to have those.
So maybe they need to start a Baylor net group, like the Baylor line for basketball, to get more students there. Yes, we've talked about that, some way of building out a network of student groups who then reach out at maybe the fraternity or sorority. That came up in a discussion we had a couple of years ago, again, but kind of stopped off during COVID when nobody could come. Lane, any thoughts on those?
Nope, agree. Tough. Last one there about analysis. Like Moneyball, except for business only.
So the question is, what type of analysis do we teach? So it's business analytics, so customer relationship management, CRM, database management. A lot of our students get a double major in MIS that are on the analytics track. And so they go to work. We just had one hired at Sacramento Kings to be a CRM coordinator. Another one went to be with a business analyst who's going to serve the Milwaukee Bucks and do financial analysis of their business operations for a company called E15, which previously was the CEO was Jamie Faulkner, Baylor grad, now COO of the Blackhawks, and married to Colin Faulkner, another Baylor grad who's the senior vice president of the Chicago Cubs. Just thought sports fans out there might be interested. They are the power couple. Did y'all catch that? So the Faulkners, Colin is senior vice president of the Cubs. That's all you could do, dude. We have a long history with him. And then his wife, and his story and my story are almost identical. We both married way smarter people. She's the smart one. He's the, I guess, fortunate one. And she's the chief operating executive officer for the Blackhawks.
Wow, fantastic.
Yep.
That's impressive. Well, I will say just having a background, having a foundation in analytics, both financial analysts, strategy analysis, and obviously just the pure, technical aspect of analytics, very, very powerful foundation. You can take that in many, many different ways in the marketplace.
We've had graduates hired by the FBI because they were good at sales, which means to be good at sales, you have to be able to ask questions effectively to get good answers.
Yep.
To arrest them and then put them away. Yeah.
A question popped up about esports. Are we going to offer business classes on that topic? I don't think there will be a new class to cover that as much as we cover that as part of the conversation. No matter where sports goes, whether it's esports or heavier into soccer as it has the last decade and seems to be heading more in that direction, or in more professional women's sports, for example, are growing at a pretty good clip. No matter where that goes, they'll still need sales and analytics. So we'll have more use cases and different recruiters that'll come our way, but not necessarily a new course. But yeah,
although I think maybe Lane. So Paul Bloss asked a question about sports gaming. If you're referencing FanDuel and all the other betting as in gaming, no, we'll not be offering that. However, I know some universities are. I've seen some posted, which is kind of interesting. Is there some psychology, consumer behavior that's different about the gambling sports fan? There probably is a little bit there, but we only offer for sports analytics. There are 2 business analytics. It's core fundamental tools you need, and then 2 professional sales for sports. So adding a course anytime means hiring more people, and somebody's got to pay for that.
There's still certainly focus, which I'm guessing is the gist of Paul's question. Saying gambling and analytics.
Yeah. Now we are seeing that play out in the business that I have that we work on with sponsorship analytics. So we've done a lot of measurement of FanDuel, in particular DraftKings sort of thing, and then increasingly the states that are legalizing betting. As you might guess, Baylor and our purpose to try to help people with their lives and not follow addictive paths. We're probably not going to be promoting that route, but we're not against measuring and understanding the behavior behind it.
So, Kirk, on that, are the 2 traditional paths that kids take out of your program going into the work is either a sales, contributor, sales leadership type of role, or on the analytics? Are those kind of the typical paths that the kids, the graduates take coming out of your program?
Yeah. So either going into ticket sales for a professional team, we can place those all day long. You want to go work for Atlanta Hawks, you want to go work anywhere around the country and sell tickets and work your way up to vice president role. That's like where Todd Pollock did and some others. Then the other path is sponsorship sales, which is a little more creative selling. So we have a couple of large recruiters that mostly take them into college athletics to sell sponsorships, like Toyota at the stadium, for instance. Somebody's got to go with Learfield, IMG, these third-party groups, or Peak Management, Sports Management, which is, they have a bunch of mid-majors, and they've hired probably 6 of our kids in the last couple of 3 years. In fact, one of our graduates, Wes Abercrombie, might recognize the last name.
Yeah, slightly.
Son of, he's the VP of sales for Peak Sports Management, and they have about 20 or 30 mid majors that do that. So sales, tickets, or sponsorships, and then the other is analytics, either working for an agency, like I mentioned, like E15, or maybe Genesco Sports. We've had 2 kids. These are great. Genesco Sports, an agency, hired one of ours who's works for the Diamondbacks, but he's managing the BMW, helping manage the BMW account for their sponsorship at the Diamondbacks. Then the other one is an assistant sponsorship, if you will, brand manager that does works for, I think it's Range Rover and Jaguar. We've asked for any kind of benefits we might get for helping place them anyway. So there's those kind of jobs. Then the other is business analytics. So working as an analyst of all the customer data that comes into a team, or it could be for a brand or agency. We've had some go to work for non-sports businesses who want analysts, like at Google or someplace else.
Yep.
Had a few go to Oracle, because we train them in business analytics, and basically Oracle, they can sell business analytics tools.
Yeah,
And it's kind of a perfect combo.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. Oracle hires a lot out of school for their, what they call their Oracle direct business. I mean, that's the industry I'm in. And so they take a lot of, younger kids, if you will, just straight out of school to teach them how to sell the Oracle way and, take a set of products and a defined territory and get after it. I mean, it's a phenomenal way to start your career.
Well, and they pay, so parents will want to know about this. So Oracle, the ones we've had placed more recently, started at about $70K
Yep.
for an undergrad, so not bad. They can live on that, pay off their school debts maybe. And then the ones that go to work for agencies out of our program, like the one I mentioned with E15 and some of the others, they might be in the mid 60s. So again, pretty good. Sponsorship sales is probably 40 something, typical of marketing majors, about on average with marketing major.
Yeah.
Ticket sales could be anywhere from, if you're not very good, sales could be in the 20s. If you're pretty good, you ought to be between 40 and 60 your first year.
For ticket sales. Okay.
Yeah, ticket sales.
Yeah. It's around mid 40s for most in year 1. Year 3 on average it's 80s. It's kind of, if it's for them, then they do really well. If it's not, then they move on.
Yeah, that's great. That's great to actually combine those two skill sets, because as a sales master, I lead the Americas for Honeywell for our connected buildings and organization, and to have an analytics background is where I started, but then to bring the sales DNA into it, it's a perfect combination, because you're always having to analyze what's going on in the marketplace, what's going on in your territory, what's going on with your organization to define what your go-to-market strategies need to be. So it's a great mix.
And I would say, if anybody on our listening audience, we've shifted our strategy a little bit. Daryl and I used to kind of be, you want to do sports and that's the way it is. If not, then good luck, but I know what we'll do. But now we're more of, and I guess we've always been this way, seriously, but if we have somebody that gets our training and then wants to go work for like AT&T, who's hired 2 or 3 of our kids in the last 2 years and work in B2B sales, then awesome.
Yep.
Want to go work for Google and do analytics or something else, then great. So some of y'all are out there, you're thinking, I'd love to be able to recruit those kind of kids, but I'm not in sports. Please contact us. We'd like to have that possibility for the child who enters coming to S3, comes to Baylor for that, but then says, you know what? Yeah, I'd be fine with making more money and enjoying my life doing that. We just want them to go where the Lord wants them to go.
Yeah. Super popular book called Range by David Epstein, and goes through all the stats of how people change their career paths and basically have more experiences help. So some find out that sports is where they want to stay and want to be and great, and some find out not, but they still benefited a lot from experiencing that, which helped them find the right fit somewhere else. So all the above are good.
Do we have 1 minute left, John?
I think we have 1 minute left. Yes.
Yeah. So I'll throw this little tidbit in there I learned a few years ago. So the brand equity you get for that first job, early jobs, can determine your total earning power through the rest of your career. So if you go to work for, say, the San Antonio Spurs, who've hired about 2 a year from us since we started, frankly, not all that many have stayed there. We have some that are. We have a couple that are managers. But as soon as you see that I'm thinking maybe your child who comes here, but as soon as someone else sees that resume that says your first job was San Antonio Spurs, they've already done the, if you will, giving you credence that this is a good person. Wow, the San Antonio Spurs hired him. And then that helps them down the line. So you're like what Slane's saying, experience helps, but also the brand equity of having an NBA, NFL, or whatever team.
Good trajectory.
Yeah. You're starting at a certain place and building upon that if you manage yourself well. That's a really good point. Really, really good point.
Right,
let's see here. I think there could be opportunities with large corps.
Yes. Yeah. So
like that. Yeah. You guys work with.
Could they go to work for State Farm or somewhere else? Yes. And or through the agencies that work with the brands. So Genesco Sports is one of the largest ones, the one I just explained. So essentially they're working with BMW, but the agency does the work. What's interesting is that most brands don't have but maybe a handful of people working sponsorships. but they employ agencies that employ hundreds.
Yeah, I've got one student who works for Geico on their partnerships, but it's a small team of less than 5.
So
Yeah.
money to be made, and the best pay, by the way, is with the agencies. They also place at like core software and SSB that are on the data analytics side. They can start in those positions at say 60K or better, typically on the analytics side, coming out and working for an agency. But the cool thing is their clients might be the New York Yankees, or maybe even a team in the Premier League.
Yeah, so from that standpoint, the network equity that you build coming out of school is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And have a championship team while you were here, all the better.
exactly. Well, guys, I think we're at time here. Very, very informative conversation. Started with the incredible experience of winning the national championship, what we can do, and then obviously pivoted to how this can actually apply to people's individual lives. So definitely appreciate the time and the energy and the thoughts on that front. Very much appreciate it.
Thank you all for hosting us.